Steve Harvey had hosted Family Feud for over a decade, but nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold on that Tuesday afternoon in March 2024. The studio lights were bright, the audience was energetic, and two families stood ready to compete in what everyone assumed would be another entertaining but typical episode. The Patel family from New Jersey faced off against the Chandri family from California, both bringing their own unique energy to the stage. But one contestant, 26-year-old Priya Chandri, was about to make television history in a way that would leave Steve Harvey speechless, the audience in tears, and viewers around the world inspired by what true determination looked like. Priya stood at the Fast Money podium wearing a stunning burgundy sari with golden embroidery that caught the studio lights beautifully. Her traditional Indian jewelry sparkled as she moved, the delicate mang tika adorning her forehead catching everyone's attention. She had insisted on wearing her grandmother's wedding jewelry for this appearance, despite her family suggesting she might want something more casual for American television. But Priya had her reasons that would soon become clear to everyone watching. The Chandri family had already won the main game, and now it was time for fast money. Priya's cousin had gone first, scoring a respectable 142 points. That meant Priya needed just 58 points to win the $20,000 prize. For most contestants, this would be a moment of nervous excitement. For Priya, it was something much more significant. Steve approached her with his characteristic swagger, ready to deliver his usual pregame banter. But something about Priya's demeanor made him pause. She wasn't exhibiting the typical nervous energy of a fast money contestant. Instead, she had a quiet intensity, a focused determination that seemed to fill the space around her. "Priya, you ready for this?" Steve asked, his voice warm and encouraging. Priya nodded, adjusting her dupatta slightly before placing her hands on the podium. "I've been ready for this my whole life, Mr. Harvey," she said, her voice clear despite the slight tremor in her hands. Steve raised an eyebrow at the response but continued with the game setup. "All right, Priya, you know how this works. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You've got 20 seconds. Just say the first thing that comes to your mind. Your cousin got us 142 points. So you need 58 to win that $20,000. Priya took a deep breath, and in that moment she thought about everything that had brought her to this point. 6 months ago, her father had suffered a massive heart attack. The medical bills had devastated their family savings, and her parents' small restaurant in San Diego was struggling to stay afloat. Her mother had been working 18-hour days trying to keep the business running while also caring for her recovering husband. Priya had taken a leave from her engineering job to help, but they were drowning in debt. The Family Feud appearance had been a last-minute decision when another family had to cancel, and the producers had reached out to them as potential replacements. Priya had seen it as a sign, maybe even divine intervention. 20 seconds on the clock, please, Steve announced, snapping Priya back to the present. The familiar timer appeared on the screen. "Here we go, Priya. Name a fruit you might find in a pie." Without hesitation, Priya responded. "Apple." Steve continued rapidly through the questions. "Name something people do when they're nervous." "Bite their nails," Priya answered instantly. "How many hours of sleep should you get each night?" 8. Name a place where you have to wait in line. DMV. Name something that makes you feel better when you're sick. "Mother soup," Priya said, and for just a moment her voice caught slightly on the word mother. The buzzer sounded and Steve gave her an encouraging nod. "Good job, good job. Let's see how you did." As they moved to reveal the answers, something extraordinary began to happen. "You said apple for a fruit in a pie," Steve announced, survey said. The board revealed the number 1 answer with 47 points. Apple was the top response. The audience erupted in applause, but Priya remained focused, her hands pressed together in front of her chest in a subtle prayer position. "You said bite their nails for something people do when they're nervous," Steve continued. The board showed it as the number 1 answer again with 31 points. Steve's eyebrows raised slightly. 2 number 1 answers in a row was impressive, but not unheard of. 8 hours of sleep, Steve read. Survey said. Number 1 answer, 29 points. Now Steve was genuinely surprised. The audience was getting louder with each reveal. 3 number 1 answers in a row was exceptional. DMV for a place where you have to wait in line, Steve announced. And even before the board revealed it, there was an electric anticipation in the air. Number one answer, 43 points. The studio erupted. 4 consecutive number one answers in Fast Money was almost unprecedented. Steve looked at Priya with genuine amazement. "Young lady, do you understand what's happening here?" But Priya wasn't celebrating yet. She stood perfectly still, her eyes closed, her lips moving in what appeared to be a silent prayer. "We have one more answer," Steve said, his voice reflecting the gravity of the moment. "You said mother's soup for something that makes you feel better when you're sick. If this is the number one answer, Priya, you will have done something that has never been done in the history of Family Feud. You will have gotten all 5 number one answers in Fast Money, the perfect score." The studio fell silent. Even the production crew had stopped what they were doing to watch. This was television history potentially being made, survey said. Steve paused dramatically. The board revealed the answer. Number 1, 38 points. The studio exploded into chaos. The audience leaped to their feet in a standing ovation. Steve Harvey, the man who had seen everything in his years of hosting, stood with his mouth open in complete shock. Priya had achieved the impossible. A perfect Fast Money round with all 5 number one answers, scoring 188 points and bringing the family's total to 330 points, the highest Fast Money score ever recorded. But Priya wasn't celebrating. Instead, she had collapsed to her knees right there at the podium, her hands covering her face as she sobbed. Steve immediately rushed to her side, concerned that something was wrong. "Priya, honey, are you okay?" "You just made history. This has never happened before." Through her tears, Priya looked up at Steve, and what she said next would change everything. "Mr. Harvey, I need to tell you something. I need to tell you why I'm really here." Steve helped her to her feet, keeping a supportive hand on her shoulder. The audience had quieted, sensing that something profound was happening. "Talk to me," Steve said gently. Priya wiped her tears, smearing her carefully applied makeup, but she didn't care. 6 months ago, my father had a heart attack. He needed emergency surgery, and even with insurance, the bills were over $200,000. My parents own a small restaurant, and we've been struggling to keep it open while paying for his care. Steve's expression softened as he listened. Priya continued, her voice growing stronger. "But that's not the whole story. My father came to this country from India 30 years ago with nothing but $50 and a dream. He worked 3 jobs to put himself through school, then opened his restaurant to serve authentic Indian food to our community. He taught me that, in America, anything is possible if you work hard enough." The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. When he had his heart attack, the doctor said he had less than a 20% chance of survival. But my father is a fighter. He survived, but the medical bills were destroying everything he had worked for. We were going to lose the restaurant, our home, everything. Priya paused, looking directly at Steve. 3 weeks ago, we got a notice that we had 30 days to pay or the restaurant would be foreclosed. My mother hasn't slept in weeks. She just sits by my father's bedside crying when she thinks no one is watching. Steve's eyes were glistening with unshed tears. Priya continued. "When Family Feud called and asked if we could fill in for a family that had to cancel, my mother said it was a sign from God. She made me promise to wear her mother's jewelry, my grandmother's wedding jewelry, for good luck. My grandmother passed away last year, but before she died, she told me that these pieces would bring our family protection and prosperity, when we needed it most." Priya touched the mang tika on her forehead gently. "Mr. Harvey, I studied every episode of Family Feud for the past 2 weeks. I memorized the most common answers to hundreds of questions. I practiced with my family every night after visiting my father in the hospital. I knew that if I could get to Fast Money, if I could just get those 5 questions right, maybe I could save my family's dream." Steve was visibly moved, but Priya wasn't finished. "You asked me if I understood what just happened. Yes, I understand. I just won more than enough money to save our restaurant. But more than that, I proved what my father always told me, that in America, when you combine hard work with faith, miracles can happen." The tears were flowing freely now, both from Priya and from many in the audience. Steve pulled her into a genuine, heartfelt hug. "Priya," Steve said, his voice thick with emotion, "your father was right. But let me tell you something else. It wasn't just hard work and faith that got you here. It was love. Love for your family, love for your father's dream, and love for the culture and traditions you're fighting to preserve." Steve turned to address the audience and the cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've just witnessed something that goes beyond a game show record. We've witnessed what the American dream really looks like. It looks like a young woman in her grandmother's jewelry standing up for her family and achieving the impossible through preparation, determination, and faith. But Steve wasn't done. He had been moved by many contestants over the years, but something about Priya's story, her quiet dignity, her refusal to give up on her family's dream, touched him deeply. "Priya, tell me about your father's restaurant. What's it called?" Priya smiled through her tears. "It's called Gharana. It means home food in Hindi. My father wanted immigrants from India to have a place where they could taste the foods that reminded them of home." Steve nodded thoughtfully. "And where is this restaurant?" "It's in San Diego, in the Mira Mesa neighborhood. We've been there for 15 years. It's not fancy, but my mother makes everything from scratch, just like she learned from her mother in Mumbai." Steve made a decision in that moment that would have far-reaching consequences. "Priya, I want you to know something. Your $20,000 is yours. You earned it. But I'm going to make you a promise right here, right now, on national television. I'm going to visit your father's restaurant, and I'm going to bring some friends." The audience applauded, but Steve raised his hand for quiet. "I'm not done. When this episode airs, I want everyone watching to know about Gharana. I want them to know that this restaurant represents everything that makes America special. It represents dreams, family, tradition, and the courage to keep fighting even when everything seems lost." Priya was sobbing again, but now they were tears of joy and relief. Her family members had joined her on stage, all of them embracing in a group hug that seemed to embody the very essence of family itself. What happened next was unprecedented in Family Feud history. Steve turned to the production team and made an announcement. "We're going to do something we've never done before. We're going to stay in touch with the Chandri family, and in 6 months we're going to do a follow-up segment to see how they're doing." The producers looked shocked but nodded their agreement. Steve's word on his show was final. As the taping concluded and the families prepared to leave, Priya had one more surprise. She removed one of her grandmother's bangles from her wrist and approached Steve. "Mr. Harvey, in our culture, when someone does something life-changing for your family, you give them something precious to remember the moment. This was my grandmother's. She would want you to have it." Steve was clearly moved. "Priya, I can't take your grandmother's bangle." But Priya insisted, "Please, Mr. Harvey. You didn't just give us money today. You gave us hope. You gave us dignity. You made us feel seen and valued. That's worth more than any jewelry." Steve accepted the bangle with tears in his eyes. Later, he would have it framed and placed in his office, where it would serve as a reminder of one of the most powerful moments in his television career. When the episode aired 3 weeks later, the response was immediate and overwhelming. The clip of Priya's perfect fast money round went viral within hours. But it was her story that truly captured people's hearts. Within 24 hours, Gharana had received over 10,000 online reviews, all 5 stars, from people who wanted to support the family. The restaurant's social media pages gained hundreds of thousands of followers overnight. But the most incredible part was what happened to the restaurant itself. People began traveling from all over Southern California to eat at Gharana. The local news picked up the story, and soon national outlets were covering it. Food bloggers and critics who had never noticed the small family restaurant were suddenly writing glowing reviews. The mayor of San Diego even declared a day in honor of the Chandri family and their contribution to the community. This perfect moment on Family Feud had become something much larger than anyone could have imagined. It was a testament to the power of authentic storytelling, the strength of family bonds, and the beautiful reality that sometimes, when preparation meets opportunity and love guides the way, miracles really do happen on national television.